Hi friends of Think, today we are here with our director Andrew Tucker to talk about a very important event that will be the public hearing on Monday 19th at the ICJ about the legal occupation or illegal occupation of the occupied Palestinian territory in the State of Israel. So we will ask today to our director to explain us what will be this trial about. How does it will work?
It's a very important case that we have. In fact, the Court of Justice is the highest court in the United Nations system, located in The Hague. And over a year ago, some of the members of the United Nations in the General Assembly, about 88 countries, passed a resolution to ask the court to give an advisory opinion on this very specific question. And these 88 states have a view that Israel is illegally occupying territories, it's committing infringements of international law, and Israel should unilaterally withdraw from the territories in order to create a Palestinian state. The question they've formulated for the court to answer is a very, we would say, a very biased or one-sided question. I'll read it for you. What are the legal consequences arising from the ongoing violation by Israel of the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination? That's one. From its prolonged occupation, settlement and annexation of the Palestinian territory occupied since 1967, including changing the character of the holy city of Jerusalem, and from its adoption of related discriminatory legislation and measures, right? So you hear in the question that the General Assembly has already formed a view that Israel is committing infringements of international law, and it's asking the court to explain what the consequences of those infringements are. Now that's problematic because the court is being asked to assume violations of law that have never been proved. They're just allegations by states or UN organizations, which Israel has never been able to, in a court of law, been able to defend. And these proceedings now in the court, over 55 nations and international organizations will appear in the court next week. They've submitted their written statements and observations, and now they'll present it through counsel. And most of them, as I say, are very strongly in favor of a unilateral resolution of Palestinian statehood. Israel, on the other hand, says, no, the only way to achieve Palestinian statehood or autonomy, the achievement of Palestinian self-determination, is through negotiations. And there are reasons why Israel takes that view. But Israel is not part of this process. By its own choice, it's not participating in the proceedings. At least that's what we understand at the moment. So it's a very interesting set of proceedings.
Yes, in fact, we want to explain to our public, like, what it's not a trial of Israel, but about Israel. So
yes, so this is the International Court of Justice, not the criminal court. So the criminal court tries crimes. This is, as you say, it's an advisory opinion. The court is talking about what is the law. Mm-hmm. The court has been asked to give its opinion on the legal position. It's not binding, but it will be a very authoritative and very powerful decision if the court decides to do it.
Okay, so could you explain us what is an advisory opinion? Because maybe sometimes we make confusion between a decision or an advisory opinion, and what's the weight of this measure?
So the Court of Justice can do two things. It can resolve disputes between states when those states agree to bring the matter to the court. That's one kind of situation. The court can also be asked by a UN body to give an opinion. That's what's happening here. And that's in order to create legal clarity, to create certainty of the legal system. It's helpful to have a court which proclaims on those issues, but it's a judicial proceeding. The court has to go through the process of assessing the facts, analysing the law, applying the law to the facts in a judicial manner to reach a conclusion. In this case, the court is presented only with information provided by the United Nations and by the states that are participating. And as I mentioned, most of the states participating have a very strong view, which is not in favour of Israel. They don't accept Israel's arguments. So the question is really whether the court's going to be able to make an objective decision on this.
Exactly. One of the questions is, if you look at the list of the states, most of them that will be at the public hearings that will begin next Monday are Islamic states. So most of them don't believe in the existence of the state of Israel. So could the court give a really impartial advisor opinion?
Well, that's our concern, to be honest. We are assisting one of the states in the preparation for the proceedings. And this is one of the states that wants to challenge this proceedings. And a number of states and others have argued that this is such a biased set of questions, the court should not accept the request, should not issue an advisory opinion. It's really being asked to make a decision to resolve the conflict. And one of the main arguments is, well, we have a set of proceedings which the Security Council has approved of negotiations. And okay, there are no negotiations at the moment, but the only way to resolve the conflicting views of Israel and the Palestinians is through some kind of mediated set of negotiations, not through the imposition of effectively what will be, albeit non-binding, a decision which is resolving legal issues in dispute. So in that sense, we think that the court's not going to make an unbiased, because it's also being presented with information and facts. The whole UN system is built around promoting the Palestinian cause. They completely ignore Israel's claims, which are mainly twofold. One is to security. Israel says we cannot, and the Gaza Strip and what has happened since the 7th of October show this. We cannot exist as Israel in the so-called 67 lines if we don't also have a security presence in the occupied territories, because they provide a buffer zone for us to protect ourselves against Hamas, against Hezbollah, against all the other Iranian proxies which are active in the territories and the Jordan Valley. And secondly, Israel says we also have sovereignty claims, territorial claims, just as valid or potentially valid as those of the Palestinians. And this question it just completely ignores all of that, as does the UN system, which this is built on. So the court is getting a very one-sided perspective here. And I think the court really faces a challenge to decide to reject the request, or at least if it's going to make any kind of decision or offer an opinion, it has to be very careful not to become part of what is really a political process.
Already the fact that the court accepted this also formulation that looks more than a condemnation, their formulation.
Well, they haven't really accepted it yet. They've just said we've accepted the request.
The request.
We will hear the parties, but it has not yet decided whether to issue an opinion. The court can decide in its discretion that it doesn't have jurisdiction, or that it shouldn't issue an opinion, or it can decide to issue an opinion on only some of the questions, or on slightly differently formulated questions. So there's a lot of different options here going forward. We hope that the court will throw this out, because we think it's too one-sided. But that'll be the question that will be discussed next week.
Thank you. But really concretely, what could be these legal consequences? What could be these negatively and positively, these legal consequences over the occupied territory and East Jerusalem, the Holy City?
Well, so there's a number of possible scenarios. What what is being argued by some is that the occupation itself has become illegal, right? Under the law of belligerent occupation, occupation is not illegal in any sense. It's just a mechanism for making sure that the civilian population is protected and that the rights of sovereign states are protected. But this argument which has been developed over recent years is this has been going on for so long. The Palestinians have been denied their rights for so long that it's become illegal. That's the allegation. If that's the case, then the consequence could be a kind of order saying that Israel has to withdraw from the territories. It cannot have a military presence in the territories. There may even be a ruling, and that's what some states would ask for, is that settlements are illegal and should be removed. That means Jews living in these territories, Judea and Samaria, in the old city of Jerusalem, must be removed. Israel must remove them physically. So that's a very extreme position.
And this could be legally binding for
Well, not
Israel.
binding because the court's opinion is not binding, but it could then become the basis for a Security Council resolution. Correct. Where the Council says, well, this is what the court thinks, so we think as a Security Council that it should be enforced. That becomes a very political thing, of course. Will the United States stand up for Israel? Will it exercise its veto right in the Security Council? There's a whole lot of scenarios, very hard to predict, but the push is to create a legal mechanism to force Israel to give up territory, and including the city of Jerusalem, which is highly difficult from an Israeli perspective because Jerusalem is so much at the heart of the Jewish state of Israel. So there's a lot of hanging on this decision.
Okay, yes, and positively, what could we expect? Like, for example, in the last genocide case, the court did not recognize effectively the request of a genocide, of a real committed genocide. Yeah. So,
look, I think this is a court made up of 15 very different judges. The challenge for the court is going to how to come up with a decision which is sufficiently meets the common ground of enough judges to issue an opinion. And that we saw that in the South Africa case, a decision which really was a compromise and I think very unsatisfactory in some ways because of that. The likelihood is that we'll see here again something which maybe gives a little bit of room to the request but denies certain aspects. At the other extreme, there may be enough judges who say, no, for various reasons we think we should not issue an opinion on this particular request, and they'll reject it. I think that's unlikely because the courts tend to like to accept jurisdiction in these cases. They've been reluctant not to. But on the other hand, this is a very extreme kind of a case. So it's really hard to predict how the court's going to manage this.
It is hard, and maybe we should remember to our public that it's the first case before the ICJ about these consequences of this illegal occupation that is
Well, that's
claimed.
a good point. It's not the first case regarding Israel. 20 years ago, we had the Wall Advisory Opinion, which decided that many aspects of Israeli conduct were illegal. But it's the first case indeed about this definition of occupation. It's the combination of issues in the question, which I think makes it dynamite, really, and potentially very problematic, is combining all these elements and being asked to make a decision on the basis of facts and arguments which are arguably very biased. There's not many states who are putting a different perspective. That's problematic in itself. Where are those states? Why are they not appearing? But there's certainly states which did not approve the original question to the court. So there's a minority of states in the UN pushing this agenda. It's a minority of states.
Right.
And a majority don't like what is happening because they didn't vote for it. but they're also not opposing it. And it's a question whether the court will recognize that perspective, which a small number of states will be presenting.
Right. And we invite all our public to go on the website of the ICJ to see the publication of the press release about this coming 19th of February, and they will see all the list of the states and will understand also the big panorama in this very particular time for the Middle Eastern conflict. And so we thank you so much. And
follow our website, www.think-israel.org. We're going to be posting a lot of information about this case. Follow us and remain informed about these very important proceedings.
Yes. Follow us in the next few days. See you soon, and thank you to our director, Andrew Tucker.
Thank you.